that are fully painted parking spaces, right? But then we've also seen markings that are just the equivalent of tiny little T's at the corners. Would that be acceptable?
I would think so. I would think you could show that a vehicle is in that area.
Because it strikes me, I mean, we could do that with even less commitment than painting out the spaces for what that's worth.
Okay, looks like we have someone else, Ms. Britton, please identify yourself.
Britton Skinner with Downtown Frankfort, Inc. And I wanted to say that we are certainly in favor of 2-hour parking to begin with on St. Clair. And part of the addition of some on-street parking is not that on-street parking spaces on St. Clair are going to solve any sort of parking problem downtown, but it's more about the perception of you could park on St. Clair. And in our letter that went to the commission, we talked about the fact that we could create that perception by marking 6 spots in the 2 pullouts. That does give you some additional 2-hour spaces, and it doesn't change the line of sight, which there is an aesthetic concern there. And also it leaves it in a position where, you know, if the 2-way traffic study were to come back, and it allows for that kind of traffic flow. But more important, in all the comments that we received, both at the Merchants Association that Mr. Gray attended, and from various stakeholders that we spoke with, all of them said we would like parking, but they pointed to the parking garage as the primary source from which they think that parking would come. There were comments even from those who said they were in support of on-street parking on St. Clair, that it was a Band-Aid. So I'm a bit concerned on DFI's behalf that we may be looking at putting a Band-Aid on something in a way that, you know, maybe it'd be best to do the parking in those 6 pullouts, or 6 spots in the 2 pullouts, like Commissioner Wilder actually suggested at a previous meeting, instead of going ahead and putting them all down the side. So, but of course, we will support what you recommend.
Thank you. Okay, it seems to me now, trying to move this thing along, we've got 2 options. It seems like some people want to maybe vote on this tonight, is that correct? And then the city manager had suggested from his the letter that sent to Transportation Cabinet, perhaps we wait to get a response from that. So I will come down on the side of following the get a response from the Transportation Cabinet. If it's not really a crisis to get this done right tonight, and then address it next month. Okay?
I don't think there's a crisis.
Pardon?
I don't think there's a crisis.
That's right. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
And to be clear too, I mean, I'd happily vote in support of if there isn't support for 11 spaces, I'll obviously vote in support of the 6. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a given. I think that is the only decision we're making here is the decision between 6 or 11. Mm-hmm. And I'm not aware of anybody who opposes both of those measures.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what I would ask, I mean, I guess this is government at work. Delay, 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 delay. Don't take action, don't take action, don't take action. Get more information, get more information, get more information. But I guess what I would ask is that you all do take action tonight, and that you vote to allow 2-hour parking on St. Clair, contingent upon receipt of the letter from the Transportation Cabinet, and allow the business and property owners on St. Clair to work with Chief Passage and Jeff Hackbart and Chief Wilhoit to come back to you and say, here's where the loading zone should go, here's how many parking spaces we should have. So you don't lock yourself in on the vote tonight on how many parking spaces are going to be and where they're going to be. But like I said before.
Could that not be done? Them doing that and still working with city managers to get that information to us at the next time?
Because I think there is a middle ground to be had here, because there is still some discussion that needs to take place between even if we were to approve this right here and right now, there would still be some discussion required between the folks on the street, between DFI, yourself, and our staff in terms of working out exactly how the loading zones and the spacing needs to go. So I don't see the harm in us going ahead and green lighting that discussion, at least.
Of course.
I mean,
And I guess I'd like to say, with no offense and all due respect, it's one thing to sit on that side of the podium and another thing to be on this side of the podium. And, someone said there are two kinds of people. There are people that own businesses and property, and then there's that don't. And, I guess people just look at things completely different. But it would go a long way, I think, for us to be able to go back and say, here's city government at work, and yes, they've green lighted this, and we're moving ahead under certain contingents, as opposed to going back and saying, well, we went back again, and we'll go back again, and maybe we'll go back again. So I would hope that you all would take action tonight.
I've got a question.
Commissioner Turner.
This is a question for the city solicitor. In the order, would we have to specify, or would we just say we want to allow parking down there? Or would we have to specify in the order, with an attached maybe map or something like that, showing exactly where the loading zones and parking spots would be?
My recommendation would be that the order be as specific as possible, because it's going to be much easier for staff to implement the order if they know exactly what you all want them to do. So, if I were Public Works and the fire department, I'd want to have a drawing that the city commission has had the opportunity to review and comment upon and say, this is what we want.
Mm-hmm.
I think you run some risk that if you say, well, put in 11 spots, that then those, or however many spots, that those spots aren't put, where you want them to, and it may not fulfill the commission's expectations.
Right.
And I know you all have all been down there and looked at it and have an opinion as to the best way in which to do the job.
Well, I
Well,
think
could you say no less than 6, no more than 15?
Certainly an order could be that broad, but again, then what happens does the commit, if the city commit, if the staff puts in 15 and you all say, wait, that's too many, then they've got to come back and kind of rework the wheel again, so.
if I could,
Commissioner Walton.
I think there's a simple way to do this. And if a majority of the commission agree, I'd be perfectly happy to go ahead, and we don't even need to do this in the form of an order, resolution, or anything, 'cause there's no commitment involved. But I'd be happy to go ahead and authorize staff to put together an actual plan, an actual 11 parking space layout in consultation with John, the folks he represents, DFI, et cetera, but to actually put together the 11 space plan with the necessary room for loading zone, this, that, and the other. And so then when we, and then we can just vote on it, up or down, next month. I mean, I'd be inclined to support it, but that way, and I'm sorry, Commissioner May didn't raise any of these concerns until the last minute, but that would also give us an opportunity for, if folks really are going to come in from Main and Broadway and clamor against this, which I can't imagine is going to happen, but that still gives folks time to do that if they're inclined to. And that way we go ahead and authorize this to move forward to the next step, which is work out exactly how the parking plan would look. And then when we're voting on something, we're not voting on anything that's even roughly vague. And when we vote on something, we're voting either on, I'm happy to support the 11 spaces. We already know how the 6 spaces look. But then when we vote, we know exactly what we're voting on, and I think we're good to go. So is that reasonable?
Okay, it's okay, we get, Commissioner May.
Mayor, I was going to say, there's a lot of things we've talked about in the past. Things that I've talked about 10 years ago that I still would like to see done. I wouldn't put them on the agenda without informing the public it was going to be on the agenda first to vote on it. So this wasn't at the last minute. This wasn't on the agenda as of the day we got our agendas, this was not listed. I wasn't even aware anybody was going to even talk about it tonight until I got a phone call over the weekend. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't even know it was going to be on the agenda. So I said, maybe I've just been rushing so much, I just skimmed through it and just missed it. But I'm glad to know that I was right, that it wasn't. Certainly, if I'd known we were going to talk about it tonight, I could have had a chance to ask for staff reports or done these questions last week when the agenda, and I certainly would always advocate doing that, but I don't want to vote on something of this magnitude without at least announcing to the public that it's going to be on an agenda.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be at the end of the month. It can be we could say we're going to look at it at a work session and come back. But I'd rather let the normal,
Yes.
come to think of it, I'd rather let just the normal
Yes, okay.
process work.
Okay, to bring these things together, I would suggest if we have, as you suggested too, we work with the department heads, and that you should put together a plan with a certain number. We have a work session coming up in 3 weeks. By the way, I'm not gonna see you guys for 3 weeks.
Oh, man.
Normally we see every 2 weeks. Because y'all glad of that.
One of those magic
Anyway,
months.
But at the work session, we will have something, a document to look at. And so we can say, okay, we like this, or if they want to alter it, we can get it down to a specific number. Then a month from now, we can vote on it. That's unreasonable to everyone?
I think that sounds good. I know that's slower
Okay.
than you like, John, but I think that's the
Now, John,
best way to go.
could you hang in there?
Well, yeah, I mean, they
You
say a
hang in
body
there.
at rest stays at rest, a body in motion stays in motion. It would be nice to be able to go back, and I think I will be able to go back and say that you all are moving forward on this.
Okay.
Assurances that it will be on the agenda for the next month.
Okay, we have another voice to be heard from, Rebecca Hall, our grants writer.
I just wanted to get my walking orders. Do you want me to go ahead and send a letter to Transportation Cabinet inquiring if there are restrictions prior to having the plan in hand, so we know?
I would say yes.
All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay, we'll resolve that issue now for present time, all right? Thank you.
For the 5 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, are there any other citizen comments? All right, okay. Please come forth and identify yourself.
My name is Louis McLean, 111 Oak Lawn Drive here in Frankfort. I'm bringing tonight basically a request that in review of some of the past meetings and some of the activities that have taken place, what I'd like to see is I'd like to see the commission adopt a policy that wouldn't reduce the authority of the majority of 3 on the commission, but when it pertains to termination of employees such as department heads, city solicitor, people that are deemed as at-will employees, that vote still carry the same weight, but that vote not be able to be carried out unless it comes as a recommendation from the city manager. Because if we understand the way that our city manager form of government works, then all these professionals back here that have gone through scrutiny to be hired and are deemed to be professionals at what they do and qualified applicants to hold those positions, then the process should also include input from their immediate supervisor, which would be the city manager, so that doesn't get misconstrued as a political or vindictive vote, because the obligation of these department heads back here primarily is to service to the general public and citizens of Frankfort. So their obligation is to carry out all those items that are on their job description and any other pertinent procedures that the city manager would deem necessary. So that, to me, the commission, as far as their directive and their policy making, they may direct the city manager, but that way that these department heads can carry out their function without the constant that they deal with now as far as any given night. And again, just as we had displayed earlier, it doesn't even have to be on the agenda. But if there's 3 votes come from this commission, they're getting a bus ticket. Well, these are qualified professionals. They shouldn't be under that kind of pressure. You're asking them to do a job, they've done their job, and they continue to do that. If they don't do it, then it needs to come from the city manager, not from this board. This board needs to direct it to the city manager, and then him carry that out. Because what happens is, and it becomes an issue where that they're responsible to the city manager, and now all of a sudden they get pressure from people outside of the city manager. Well, that's not conducive to good business operation in any organization. So I'd ask that you consider that, research it, whatever the case may be, and that if that comes to a vote for whatever reason, that comes as a directive from the city manager, not just a 3 vote that carries that kind of weight to terminate somebody. Now, if they've not been doing the job, city manager should know that. So that this doesn't get construed as being a vindictive vote.
Okay. Do we have a response? Commissioner Wilder?
As I'm sure most of us should be aware, the city manager form of government is established and laid out within the Kentucky Revised Statutes. And KRS is pretty clear that in terms of the chain of command and the way a city manager government is supposed to work. And we've heard this kind of philosophy before. Past commissioners, I'm not going to name them by name. The mayor tends to reprimand me when I do. But past commissioners have argued very directly that it's the city commission's role to approve or disapprove whatever the city manager puts in front of us. So it's his role to make suggestions to us, and it's our role is to approve or disapprove them. Which is, of course, completely contrary to what KRS says. I mean, within that context, the suggestion here is that the city commission essentially shouldn't do anything that doesn't go through the city manager first. When, of course, KRS and the chain of command are very clear that it works the other way. And KRS is also very clear that the authority to hire and fire city officers resides in the executive authority of the city, period. And some people, I think, argue or claim that the executive authority is the city manager. And they claim that's how a city manager form of government is supposed to work. But anybody who's actually read the law knows that the executive authority is the city commission, is a majority of the city commission. So, I mean, you're essentially suggesting that we ignore state law and kind of turn the chain of command in Frankfort, upside down so that the commission can't hire or fire anybody without the city manager's approval, when in reality, state law is pretty clear that it needs to be the other way around. And to even get more, to get more specific, I mean, a lot of people are going to get really upset with some of what I'm about to say, but, we, at the very beginning of this year, the commission went into closed session to discuss personnel, and I made a case that some of our city officers simply couldn't be trusted to tell us the truth, or to even necessarily respect the direction of the commission. And I even presented a raft of evidence to that effect, and a majority of the commission agreed that the evidence was, troubling, and in some cases undeniable. But half the commission was new; they had just come on, and we had just brought on a new city manager as well. And Fred asked us to give him 6 months to try and turn things around to see if some of these problems could be dealt with internally before we just replace people. And we gave him 6 months. Nothing really changed. 6 months turned into a year. But just to give you one, just one cut and dried example of why I think your suggestion wouldn't work. We have a subsidiary of the city known as KCDC. Used to be called SECITA, but it's the Economic Development Authority that we share with the county. And there had been efforts in the past by the city solicitor to charge our Economic Development Authority interest on loans that we had covered for them. And those efforts didn't fly with past commissions. But this time around, we were asked to cover some debt service for them again. We agreed to cover it, and the commission authorized, at the city solicitor's request, we authorized the mayor to sign any document related to the coverage of that loan, which of course is a very broad authorization, and some folks took advantage of that broad authorization, and it turns out that by doing that, we authorized charging our subsidiary 6% interest. And we didn't even know that we had authorized that.